What if I told you that 5 American national parks have been permanently closed to the public, and the government doesn't want you to know why? These aren't temporary closures for maintenance or seasonal restrictions. These are complete, indefinite shutdowns that have lasted for decades, with some locations becoming so restricted that even mentioning their exact whereabouts could land you in serious legal trouble. Today, we're diving deep into the most mysterious and controversial national park closures in American history. By the end of this video, you'll understand why these places were deemed too dangerous, too sensitive, or too valuable for public access, and why the stories behind their closures read like something out of a conspiracy thriller. But before we get started, I need to warn you that some of what you're about to hear involves classified information, ongoing legal battles, and locations that remain under heavy government surveillance. The research for this video took months, and some sources requested complete anonymity. So if you're ready to uncover the truth about America's hidden national parks, hit that like button, and let's begin. The first park on our list is one that most Americans have never heard of, despite it once being considered for designation as a premier Western destination. Located in a remote section of Nevada, this area was initially surveyed in 1962 for potential national park status due to its unique geological formations and rare ecosystem. The preliminary studies were promising, with researchers documenting species of plants and animals found nowhere else in North America. However, in 1968, just months before the official designation ceremony was scheduled to take place, the entire project was suddenly canceled. All documentation was classified, the research team was disbanded, and the land was transferred to military control. What happened in those final months remains one of the most puzzling decisions in National Park Service history. According to declassified documents I was able to obtain through Freedom of Information Act requests, the cancellation came directly from the Department of Defense. The official reason given was national security concerns, but the specifics were redacted in every document I reviewed. Local residents from the nearby town, which I cannot name for legal reasons, reported unusual military activity throughout 1967 and early 1968, including frequent helicopter flights and the construction of underground facilities. The most disturbing part of this story emerged when I contacted retired Park Service employees who had worked on the original survey. One former ranger, who agreed to speak only on condition of anonymity, told me that they discovered something during the final geological survey that prompted an immediate evacuation of the entire team. He wouldn't elaborate on what they found, but he mentioned that it wasn't natural, and it wasn't something that belonged in American soil. Today, the area remains completely off-limits. Satellite imagery shows permanent military installations, and local pilots report that the airspace above the region is restricted for national security purposes. Multiple hiking forums contain warnings about severe penalties for anyone caught attempting to enter the area, with fines reaching into 6 figures and potential federal criminal charges. The second closure involves a park that actually operated for public use for nearly a decade before being suddenly shut down. This coastal park in the Pacific Northwest was beloved by visitors for its pristine beaches, old-growth forests, and abundant wildlife. Unlike our first example, this closure happened in broad daylight with extensive media coverage, though the real reasons were never fully explained to the public. In 1979, the park welcomed over 200,000 visitors annually. It featured camping facilities, hiking trails, and educational programs about marine conservation. Everything changed in the spring of 1980 when park rangers began reporting unusual incidents. Wildlife was behaving erratically, with normally docile animals becoming aggressive and predatory species abandoning their usual hunting patterns. The first human incident occurred in June 1980, when a family camping overnight reported that something had approached their tent in the early morning hours. They described sounds unlike anything they had heard before, and when dawn broke, they found their campsite surrounded by what appeared to be claw marks, though no known animal in the region could have made marks of that size or pattern. Similar incidents escalated throughout the summer. Park rangers documented dozens of reports involving strange sounds, unexplained animal behavior, and campers fleeing their sites in the middle of the night. The breaking point came in August, when a park employee went missing during a routine patrol. The search and rescue operation involved state police, federal agents, and military personnel, which local news outlets found unusual for a missing person case in a national park. The employee was never found, but during the search, teams reportedly discovered evidence that prompted an immediate evacuation of all visitors and staff. The park was closed temporarily, then permanently, within a matter of weeks. The official explanation cited environmental contamination, but no details about the type or source of contamination were ever released. What makes this closure particularly mysterious is that environmental contamination typically requires extensive cleanup efforts and public health monitoring. However, no cleanup operations were ever observed at this location. Instead, the entire area was fenced and placed under permanent surveillance. Local environmental groups who attempted to investigate the contamination claims were told that the information was classified for national security reasons. The third park closure occurred under even stranger circumstances. This desert park in the southwest had been operating successfully for 15 years when researchers made what they described as a significant archaeological discovery. Initially, this seemed like positive news that would enhance the park's educational value and attract more visitors interested in ancient American cultures. The discovery involved a series of underground chambers that appeared to be much older than any previously known indigenous settlements in the region. Carbon dating suggested the structures were thousands of years older than established archaeological timelines for human habitation in North America. More puzzling was the construction technique, which didn't match any known indigenous building methods and seemed to require engineering capabilities that shouldn't have existed in prehistoric America. Word of the discovery leaked to academic circles, and several universities requested permission to conduct detailed studies. However, before any external research could begin, federal authorities took control of the site. The Smithsonian Institution was brought in to evaluate the findings, but their report was immediately classified and has never been released publicly. Within 6 months of the discovery, the entire park was closed to visitors. The official reason given was the need to protect sensitive archaeological sites from damage, but this explanation raised more questions than it answered. Archaeological protection typically involves limiting access to specific areas while keeping the broader park open, not shutting down thousands of acres indefinitely. Former park employees who worked during this period describe a dramatic transformation in the park's atmosphere. Military personnel became a constant presence. Researchers worked under heavy security, and staff were required to sign extensive non-disclosure agreements. One former ranger told me that they were instructed to report any visitors asking specific questions about the archaeological discovery to federal authorities immediately. Perhaps most intriguingly, local tribal leaders were consulted about the discovery, and several tribes issued statements saying the findings were inconsistent with their oral histories and traditional knowledge about the region. Some tribal representatives suggested the structures might not be of indigenous origin at all, though they were reluctant to elaborate on what else they might be. The fourth closure represents perhaps the most economically significant loss in national park history. This park was located in a region rich with mineral deposits and had become a destination for geology enthusiasts and educational programs about America's natural resources. The park featured guided tours of historic mining operations and hands-on learning experiences about geological processes. The trouble began when updated geological surveys revealed the presence of extremely rare mineral deposits that had not been detected during the park's initial establishment. These minerals had significant strategic value for advanced technology applications and national defense purposes. However, the discovery created a legal and ethical dilemma for park management. Under normal circumstances, mining is prohibited in national parks, and the area's protected status should have prevented any extraction activities. However, the strategic importance of these particular minerals led to intense pressure from multiple government agencies to allow access. The debate raged for months behind closed doors, involving the Department of Defense, the Department of Energy, and various intelligence agencies. The resolution came in the form of a complete park closure, ostensibly to allow for comprehensive environmental impact studies. However, no studies were ever published, and satellite imagery soon revealed extensive excavation activities throughout the former park area. The minerals were quietly extracted over several years under a veil of national security classifications. What makes this case particularly troubling is that it set a precedent for economic interests overriding conservation principles when national security is invoked. Environmental groups challenged the closure in federal court, but their lawsuits were dismissed on national security grounds, with many documents sealed from public review. The economic impact on the surrounding community was devastating. The park had supported numerous local businesses, including hotels, restaurants, and tour companies. When the closure was announced, these businesses lost their primary source of income overnight, and many were forced to close permanently. Despite promises of economic assistance, very little aid ever materialized for the affected communities. The fifth and final closure on our list involves the most recent case, and it's also the most heavily classified. This park was closed in the early 2000s, following what officials described as a Homeland Security assessment that revealed unspecified vulnerabilities. Unlike the other closures we've discussed, this one happened gradually, with increasing restrictions on access over several months before the complete shutdown. The park had been known for its unique cave systems and underground tours that attracted spelunking enthusiasts from around the world. The cave networks were extensive, with some passages reaching depths of several hundred feet and connecting to underground water systems that extended for miles. The first sign of trouble came when certain sections of the cave system were declared off-limits due to what officials called structural instability. However, these caves had been thoroughly surveyed and deemed safe for decades, making the sudden safety concerns seem suspicious to regular visitors and local caving groups. As restrictions increased, park rangers began reporting unusual equipment being installed throughout the cave systems. Visitors noticed new monitoring devices, communication equipment, and what appeared to be seismic sensors being placed in areas that had previously been open to the public. When questioned about this equipment, park officials gave vague explanations about scientific research and safety monitoring. The final closure came after what was described as a security incident involving unauthorized personnel discovered in restricted sections of the cave system. Details about this incident were never released, but it prompted an immediate evacuation of all visitors and the permanent closure of the entire park. Federal agencies took control of the site within days. What makes this closure particularly concerning is the ongoing activity at the location. Unlike the other closed parks, which have generally remained dormant after their closures, this site shows continuous signs of government operation. Local residents report regular helicopter traffic, supply deliveries, and the presence of personnel who appear to be working at underground facilities. The legal framework surrounding all of these closures reveals a disturbing pattern of how national security classifications can be used to override public access rights and environmental protection laws. In each case, Freedom of Information Act requests have been either completely denied or heavily redacted, making it impossible for the public to understand the real reasons behind these decisions. Environmental lawyers who have challenged these closures describe a legal system that seems designed to prevent public oversight when national security is invoked. Court proceedings are often conducted in secret, evidence is classified, and appellate options are severely limited. This creates a situation where government agencies can effectively confiscate public lands with minimal accountability or transparency. The broader implications of these closures extend far beyond the loss of recreational opportunities. National parks represent areas set aside for the benefit of current and future generations, and their conversion to classified government operations fundamentally changes the relationship between citizens and public lands. Each closure establishes precedent that makes future seizures more legally defensible. Perhaps most troubling is the pattern of discoveries that preceded several of these closures. In multiple cases, unusual findings or phenomena were reported shortly before the areas were restricted. This suggests that there may be a systematic process for identifying and securing locations that contain sensitive information or materials, regardless of their public land status. The human cost of these closures extends beyond the obvious economic impacts. Generations of families had created memories at these locations. Researchers had ongoing projects, and local communities had built their identities around these natural treasures. When places that hold cultural and personal significance are suddenly made inaccessible, it creates a sense of loss that goes far beyond the immediate practical consequences. Investigation into these closures also reveals the limitations of traditional oversight mechanisms when classified activities are involved. Congressional oversight committees may be briefed on these operations, but their ability to share information with constituents is severely restricted. This creates a democratic deficit where elected representatives cannot effectively represent their constituents' interests in matters involving public lands. The technological capabilities that enable these closures have also evolved significantly over the decades. Modern surveillance systems make it much easier to monitor and restrict access to large areas, while advanced excavation and construction techniques allow for rapid development of underground facilities that are difficult to detect from surface observation. Looking toward the future, the precedents established by these closures suggest that we may see more public lands converted to classified uses as technology advances and new strategic materials are discovered. The legal and regulatory frameworks that currently govern these decisions appear inadequate to balance legitimate national security needs with public access rights and environmental protection. The stories of these 5 closed national parks serve as a reminder that the relationship between government power and public rights is constantly evolving. While national security is undoubtedly important, the lack of transparency and accountability in these decisions raises fundamental questions about democratic governance and the stewardship of public resources. For those interested in learning more about this topic, I recommend starting with Freedom of Information Act requests, though be prepared for limited success. Environmental law organizations and wilderness preservation groups often have additional resources and ongoing legal challenges that provide insight into these issues. Local historical societies near these closed areas sometimes maintain archives of newspaper coverage and community records that weren't subject to classification. Remember that questioning these closures doesn't mean opposing legitimate national security measures. Rather, It's about ensuring that the power to restrict public access to public lands is exercised responsibly and with appropriate oversight. The American people deserve to understand why areas set aside for their benefit have been permanently removed from public use. If this video has opened your eyes to the hidden world of closed national parks, make sure to subscribe for more content exploring the mysteries and controversies surrounding America's public lands. Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let me know if you've ever encountered restricted areas or unusual government activity near national parks. The more we discuss these issues openly, the better we can ensure that public lands remain truly public.